Call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, August the 6th. We have a few changes to the agenda, so if y'all will bear with me. We are going to add at 6C15, promotion of a part-time communications officer to full-time. We are going to add at 6C16, a salary correction for one of our SROs. You have a memo at your spot. I'm going to ask you to remove 6C7 and 6C13. At 19A, I'm going to add request an additional 14 days to the contract time for the Downtown Regional Detention Project. And then at 23A, to consider a quote for access control system at the Animal Resource Center. Sorry, that's quite a few changes tonight. All right, with those additions and deletions, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Just a quick mayor's report. The students are back, and you can tell it on Jackson Avenue and around the square and everywhere else you go, to grocery shop and you know, all the places that we've had a few months to kind of ease into. We are going to welcome more than 7,000 freshmen, so that's more than 7,000 new cars. And that's going to be interesting, to say the least. But I will say that our trash pickup is a little bit behind as people move in, and we have so much excess trash being put out. So y'all bear with us and be patient. We are going as hard and fast as we can and working overtime and weekends and all to get it picked up. But know that we are a little behind, and if yours doesn't get picked up, don't panic and think we've forgotten. We're just running behind. So thank y'all for being patient with us. I'll ask the board to authorize the approval of the minutes of the recess meeting on July 16th, the regular meeting on July 16th, the recess meeting on July 18th, and the recess meeting on July 23rd.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll ask you to consider the consent agenda with those, I think, 4 different changes.
Motion to consider consent agenda as amended. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The next thing on our agenda is to discuss a landscape buffer at the Oxford Memorial Cemetery. And this agenda item was requested by Jill and Drew Stevens, and this is not a public hearing, but I am going to invite Drew and Jill, or Drew or Jill, to come forward and give us about 3 to 5 minutes of any remarks that you'd like to make.
Whew. Hello?
Hello.
Hey. All right. Good afternoon, and thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to stand before you tonight, and it's not lost on us that your role often means that you can't grant many of the requests that come before you, and that it's a sacrifice to sit here and make the hard decisions and to stand by them. To do what's right in the best interest of our citizens and to find that balance. We're here tonight because we feel that the replanning after the ditch project has not met that balance, and that there's room to provide more immediate buffer between the cemetery and residential properties. We believe we can do better here, and we believe it's necessary and urgent for the benefit of the community as a whole. 2 quick things in reference to the ditch that I think sometimes get left out, and one is to say publicly how grateful we are that this last section of the old city ditch was addressed. It was a process over 3 administrations, but this was the one to do it. We appreciate all the hard work to get there. Thank you. We should say that early and often. The other is the thought that the attention of the erosion issues began with us. We did begin a dialogue with the city staff roughly 13 years ago But very, very quickly, this is a copy of the Board of Alderman minutes. This is from 1980, May 6, 1980. And it reads, Robert Bateman and Larry Massey came before the mayor and board of aldermen to discuss drainage problems in the back of their homes on Combe Street. Erosion is very bad. Mayor Leslie noted that Congressman Whitten had asked the Army Corps of Engineers and the Soil Conservation Service to look into that matter. Robert Bateman is the fellow who lived in our house at 310 Combs then, and Larry Massey lived across the street at 309 Combs. He since passed away, but I spoke with Mr. Bateman today, about 30 minutes ago, and he detailed the difficulties that they experienced at what is now our property there. And the long and short of it is they wound up moving in 1983. But that was 44 years ago. And I know that not only because I can do the math real quick, but because I was born on May 5th, 1980. So I was a day old when he sent this. Same amount of hair. Jill?
I also want to say thank you to the mayor, to the board. I'm super nervous, so you can probably hear my heart beating from here. And to our city staff. Drew and I have made this town our home since 1999. We love this place and we love this city. And a city like Oxford doesn't just happen. It's because of your tireless work that you do day in and day out. Sometimes the work that people see, sometimes the work that people don't see. So thank you. Like Drew said, we probably don't say it enough, but thank you. And I'm just going to be completely open here tonight. During the decade, and I'm sorry, I'll probably get emotional because this is something that is just very personal. During the decade that we lost full use of our backyard to the city's ditch, I felt such a loss that our children missed out on what most of us have enjoyed all of our lives growing up as kids. Our kids were babies when our backyard became too dangerous because of the erosion into the city's ditch. They are now 12 and 10 right now. That is a time and a part of their childhood that we will never get back. But here we are, and when the replanting after the ditch project finished up wasn't what we saw on the plans that were provided to us, I felt like we would never be able to fully enjoy our home while we are still all under the same roof. As we experience all the renewed cemetery activity just steps from our doors. Having to wait in my car to unload groceries just because of an active funeral service facing us in our driveway, literally closer than our next door neighbors. Doing our very best to be as respectful as we can to cemetery visitors before Jack and I go outside to play catch. And waiting for groups of families to finish visiting loved ones so our kids could hunt eggs on Easter Sunday. And I could go on and on. And I wish this was a public forum because we have several mamas here that are representing the cemetery side. But you know what I've realized over the past year is that while we are mourning as a family our sense of normalcy, it doesn't hold a candle to what they've lost across the ditch. And it hurts my heart when, as a family, we witness the exposure they experience when visiting their family members in the cemetery. It's just not fair. And I can't imagine any other area of this town where planting adequate landscaping is more necessary and urgent, where the trees can accomplish the purpose of returning the cemetery to the sanctuary it has provided its Oxford families. It's a use far beyond just simple beautification. It is. It just is. So we've been told a few times over the past year and a half that the city won't spend any more money to provide additional privacy screening because it just affects two people. And in the many conversations and the open dialogue that we've had, and like I said, there's several of them here, property owners, cemeteries, families that have loved ones in the cemetery, you know, they deserve to be heard as well. But if it's up to Drew and I, and that's all we have, I understand that as well. So, I don't know, do you have any questions?
Well, I have somebody that I would like to speak as well, but do you have a question for us? Do you have a proposal for us? I mean, this is a project that's gone on for, you know, as you said, with you all, at least more than 10 years, and we have had extensive conversations in your backyard and via email and phone calls, as many of our staff members have. And I guess, you know, I can't speak to 1980, whatever, but it is a ditch mitigation, a hazard mitigation project that we worked for years to get funding for, because we also agreed that it was something that needed to be addressed. At this point, the city has spent more than $750,000 mitigating that ditch. And it, you know, I've seen several things that have been posted and all, and I guess I'm a little bit confused at, you know, you posted, other people would say, it just appears that they want to cut everything down, and why in the world would the city do this? And y'all's responses were, I don't know, we don't understand. And I guess that is baffling to me, because we have discussed it at length so many times. And as we went through this project, we sat down and said, okay, this is what is going to happen for us to re-slope your yard, fix the ditch, put in a concrete ditch so that the erosion doesn't continue. You were aware of all those plans. There was a time that we were standing in the backyard and with our Chief Operating Officer, Bart Robinson, who we were saying, okay, we get it. We are going to solve this problem. We are going to fix this erosion. But you know, all that has to go when we do, because we can't grade and dig and pour concrete channel without removing the brush that's there, the privet and the vines and the things that were the barrier. There were a couple of trees, but it was mainly vines and privet that gave a very dense barrier. And so I guess I don't understand, you know, I looked the other day, I said, let's see how many emails have been exchanged between our city engineer, and Drew's emailed from several different email accounts, but from your John Welty Realty account, there are more than 200 emails between you and the city engineer discussing, sending plans, you saying, I approve of this planting project, you emailing Mark Levy and going, the planning looks great. So I'm just confused of how you say you didn't understand. We have tried so hard to fix the problem. We have had a landscape architect and 2 city engineers that have done a planting plan that we believe is going to be great. It just doesn't grow overnight. And so, you know, I mean, I hope that you know that we have invested the time and care and thoughtfulness. We've planted over $30,000 worth of landscaping that will grow. Those trees will be 30 to 60 feet tall, and they're evergreen. So the burial will be there. It's just not going to be there overnight. And I guess I'm just, I hear you saying we want you to make it right. What does that look like? What do you mean make it right?
If I can address some of those very quickly,
sure.
Kind of run through. So I guess to start with, I'm not sure exactly all of those things happened. We were never told all of this is going to go.
I was standing beside Bart Robinson in your backyard when he said, all of this is going to go.
Do you? I'm sorry. And look, if I did, I'd say, okay, great. I think it's evident that when it was cleared, and we were like, what in the world? And the reaction to that we didn't know that, or we had some sort of amnesia. I don't know. But we were under the impression that it was going to be a culvert underground like it is when it runs behind Chandler. That's what we were told it's going to be, and so we knew that we would lose some trees, no doubt about it. Bart said, I remember him saying, you know, you're going to lose some trees. I was like, well, I mean, I don't think we have a choice now, but not coming in and clear cutting everything. And there were significant trees. It wasn't all just
Well, we
scrub.
analyzed it for our tree board as we do every project.
But there was not, I haven't been able to see anything on paper as far as a tree survey that showed exactly what was there beforehand, like the city requires for every other project that folks do in the city. So, I mean, you know, regardless of that, but we've got pictures of, you know, huge trunks being loaded out, you know, some stumps when it was during that time. I mean, and the thing is too, I believe some of those trees probably could have been saved if we had looked at it and said, well, we could probably save this one, this one, this one, maybe. I mean, it just seems like one day, you know, Jill's out west, and I've got the kids home on spring break, and the house is rumbling. People coming through the cul-de-sac. We didn't know they were going to come through the cul-de-sac. We were always told to come through the cemetery side. And, you know, there's a porta-john in our front yard, and everything's gone. I mean, I think you can tell by the way I reacted to that that's not something that I understood the way the project was going to be. 200 emails, I'd say 300 maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's just between you and the city engineer. That's, yes, there have been so many.
Over 13 years, I guess it
Yeah.
averages about 1.5 a month. And I think that highlights the fact that, you know,
But do you, Drew, I guess, I mean, I just feel like we've all spent so much time trying to come to a solution, and I've told y'all 10 times, I'm such a pleaser. I want to please y'all. I want to make it right. I want the city to do the right thing. I want us to do what we can to solve this. And I've stood in your yard and gone, tell me what you want me to do. Tell me what you want me to do. And we have developed a planting plan and planted it. And that planting plan, I get it if you couldn't envision it. I get that.
no, we could.
But
it was aerial, it was a nice view. Our issue with that was, and is, and we've got the original copy somewhere. It's probably got coffee stains and stuff all over it, but it clearly says in there that the trees are going to be 12 to 14 feet in height. It says that on there. Okay, we all agree on that. It also says they're going to be 15 gallon. And as Jill said the other day, I don't speak tree talk. I see 12 to 14 feet. I'm thinking that's what's going to be there. And what was there were 3 to 4 feet. I mean, the black chain link fence is 6 feet. They're barely topping that fence now, and that's 2 years later. And you know, there was some talk about, well, you didn't like Iliagnus. If we were to plant Iliagnus, we'd all be happy now because there'd be a pretty good barrier. We had no issue with Iliagnus. I remember one of the folks up the street had a distaste for Iliagnus, a strong, and mentioned that to Rihanna. But Iliagnus was planted, 32 of them, about $700 worth of it. We have a picture of them today. I mean, 2 feet. So what I guess is kind of hard to understand, and maybe the simplest way is special projects requested $75,000 for this replanting plan in July of 2022. Now in December, 5-6 months later, they spent roughly $17,000. That includes all the trees. That includes about $1,000 worth of pine straw. I can look it up. Sodding, which was in the construction plans. The bushes, everything. To Smith, I don't know about the $30,000 that you mentioned. I haven't.
Well, we've got a detailed list of it. Bart or Mark, which one of y'all wants to address?
Sure, but it's not the 75, and so
Well,
we could sit here all
the
day
75
long.
was never approved. We looked at the planning
But if
plan,
that's
but
what
we've
this-
explained all that to you 10 times, Drew. We're having the same.
Well, yeah, and it does feel like sometimes we go in circles, because why would the city ask for 75 if that's not what they wanted to spend? Why? The city put that request in. That doesn't make sense to me.
You want to address that? Sure, yeah, that's great. So this is Mark Levy, who, introduce yourself and say what your education and background is for people who
I
don't know
know
you.
a lot of people here, but for those that don't, I'm Mark Levy. I'm Special Project Director, and we worked together on this plan that we really worked on together. So I've got a master's degree in landscape architecture from Mississippi State, and I'm a licensed landscape architect and a certified arborist, and I have about 12 years experience, professional experience in the landscape field. And I've had the privilege of working on projects, the Morgan Family Park, the City Hall Park, East Jackson, tree plantings all over the city. And so when this project came up, Rihanna Mid-World sat me down and said, initially the plans from the engineer, Jeff Williams, had a landscape plan. And we went through that landscape plan together. And at that time, the property next to the Stevens was mostly deciduous hardwood plantings, which means for at least a third of the year, they were going to be completely bare and exposed to the cemetery sides. We didn't really like that plan. I don't think anybody, would you all agree? I don't think anybody really wanted to use that first plan. So we looked at that area. That area that you can see here, between the fence, the culvert, and where we have already sold plots for the cemetery, is very challenging for planting for several reasons. First is we can't get irrigation there. We can't get underground irrigation. It's hard to get water over there. So we have to have a tree that's going to be drought tolerant. And it has to be able to survive our harsh winter and summers as well. Secondly, the planting area is pretty narrow. It's only about 15, 20 feet of space. Again, we've sold cemetery plots. We have to honor that. We can't encroach upon those plots that we've sold. The challenge is we got to have height. So you don't have much width. You got to have height. You got to have an evergreen. You need drought tolerant. We went through a bunch of different factors, and there's even several more than this, and decided that green giant arborvitae were the best. These tall trees that you see, and this is, I can't point, but this gray box, this is Stevens House, and this is the cemetery on the south side. We felt like that was a good solution. They're more disease tolerant than Leland cypress, and they're faster growing than hollies, and they've got a good lifespan. So that's what we went with. So then we looked at availability, and y'all can stop me if I'm getting too in the weeds, but I'm trying to paint the full picture here. So we looked at the availability of the plants, and I knew immediately that the container plants would have the best chance to survive for the issues that we just talked about. So you can get taller trees, but they're going to be in ball and burlap, which have to be field grown. And when you dig them from a field, you lose about 50% of the roots or more. There's no way, I don't see without water how they would survive this particular setting to use a ball and burlap tree. I haven't had success in that situation. So we knew that we needed to get the largest container size that was available. We looked at the container size. That was post-COVID. Supply was really low. There wasn't a difference between 15 and 30 gallons as far as height. So on the plan, I had it in the description, which I can show you. It said 12 to 14 foot height on the planting schedule, and it had a container size. The height was, let's see, I'll show you exactly what we're talking about. So we talked about the height. This says 12 to 14 feet. It says 15 gallon. I got a call, and of course we want the tallest 15 gallon we can find. If we can find 12 to 14 gallon, great. If not, we got to go with the container because we can't use ball and burlap. So we established that. Not a single grower was able to locate anything taller than what we put out there. We looked around and looked to get the tallest container we could, and that's what we ended up with. I did believe then, I believe now that specifically the container grown arborvitae will provide the best long-term evergreen screen, continuous line of evergreen coverage for the cemetery and for the Stevens. And I know that the impact's not going to be immediate, and I do think that if you focus on the immediacy of the screen, that can also cause long-term problems because as a general rule, the faster something grows, the shorter lifespan it has, which you don't need evergreen trees with a short lifespan in a cemetery. So Mr. Stevens and I met multiple times to review the plan. We met downstairs in planning, we met in my office, we met at his house on the back deck. We had that same set of plans we rolled out. We went through it. We made some changes, and we accommodated the changes. And I did tell the Stevensons repeatedly that not to expect an immediate screen, that nothing we could put there would provide an immediate screen. They were probably going to be shorter than he realized, and it may take a little longer than he realized to get that continuous screen, but we felt like we were using the right plant material. So the Stevens reviewed the plans. They said the plan looked awesome, looked smart. He said, please roll with the plan. And then he emailed me after the trees were planted and said, thanks for the tree planting, the tree plan and the efficiency in planting. So they were planted in December of 2022. I'm almost done. We experienced the sustained below freezing weather in, I think, December or January of 23. And then the summer of 23, we had a long drought. So I looked at those plants because we had a year-long warranty, a maintenance period, and we replaced. But after inspecting the plant, we had the cold winter, the harsh summer. Considering what we had been through, the trees and shrubs have survived pretty well. We replaced a few trees. And then I went out there last week, and walked the whole site, and those trees are growing, and they're putting on new growth. They appear to be doing really well. It does take time.
What is their expected growth, Mark? Like what?
Once the feeder roots get established, we expect to have 3 foot a year until they reach about 40 or 50 feet tall and form that continuous hedge that we're looking for. So in summary, I just want to say I feel like the city or I have provided a sufficient and satisfactory screening for relatives and families of those interred at the cemetery and as well as the neighbors. I feel confident that the neighbors around the site were able to weigh in on the project on the front end. And I think they understood that it would take time to fill in. I also believe that there's potential, if you add plant material, more plant material, you could have unintended consequences, like crowding. But anyway, that's all I've got. I'm happy to answer any other questions anybody's got. Or we can look at pictures. So what you saw earlier is the plan, and that's about a month after it was planted, and you can see that we did what we said we would.
Does anybody have any questions of Mark?
Mayor,
Stevens?
I have one just so it can be marked while you're up there. When you say there are unintended consequences like crowding, what does that mean? Is it going to kill the screen that's already there?
Well, we have
it, so we're only gonna hear from the Stevens.
Okay, we have an established tree in the ground that we know is doing well and surviving. And when you plant something else, there's potential to crowd out that plant or to take nutrients from that plant and stunt the growth. I mean, eventually, again, that's going to be a screen. And it may be that there's other plants and trees that grow in between them naturally, just like what was there before with the privet. And I think that's a possibility. I know that with the privet, that all happened naturally with succession. I know that Stevenson planted vines on their fence and almost have a complete barrier. Okay, all right. On your side, okay. All right. Sorry, I was going to get a picture, but yeah, that's what I mean by that. Sorry, I had some pictures of what it looked like.
Does anybody have a question?
Those vines, yeah. So this was last week.
Did anybody think about putting a wooden fence on either side? Instead of,
We did offer a wooden fence at one point, and we put it on the property line, which is closer to their house than those trees are, and they did not want the wooden fence.
At some point, things got, by not having a plan attached to this project, as the city requires of other folks to do.
You don't speak here.
Oh, thanks. From July to when we met with Mark in October, we kept asking, what is this gonna look like? And I mean, from the moment it was all clear, we're like, oh, what is this gonna look like? That was the question. And it ranged from some really strange, well, you could have sod or trees, or sod or that fence. And, I mean, we know this town, we know, the reputation we have for love of trees and tree mitigation. So we didn't understand why that wasn't applied here. And Mark, you've been great. We like you a lot. I don't know if that was, there's been some insinuations that the Stevens, it's been a long process, they've been difficult to deal with. This has all been difficult for us to deal with. But even now, when you just said we met several times, I think that was all on the same day, because I came to meet you at your office, but then you had to run home, and then we met later that evening for about 15 minutes, and then our neighbor over at his house kept you for about an hour. But, you know, I don't remember us going back and forth, or we liked that plan. The plan that we thought were gonna be 12 trees that were 12 to 14 feet. I hate to keep going back to that, but I'm just being honest, that's what we saw. And if we had that, if that had been planted, if that was possible to be planted, I know you made it sound like it wouldn't maybe be the best way to go, but that would be double that black fence when it was planted. And 2 years later, we'd be talking about, what, almost 20 feet? I mean, you know, like I said, I know it doesn't sound like it, but we do appreciate this. We really do. It just can be better. And I really do have to ask, because I think it's a fair question. I really, really do. Because this is just Jill and I right here. And because it's been said many times that this only affects 2 people, you know, and we have said every time, respectfully, that's just not true, because it's just not true. And I think if there's 1 or 2 people out there who have a loved one and buried in this cemetery and this has affected them, I don't see why we're all here. I think 5 minutes to them is, I think they deserve that. They deserve to be up here
Drew,
more than we do.
tell me what you want us to do. I've asked that before, but like, so that this board can make a decision.
Sure.
Tell me what you're asking for.
Right now, what I'm asking for is for the board to be as informed as possible. And that you're not gonna get that from us, because you've heard all we have to say, for good Lord, for 1.5 years since these trees have been planted. You've heard plenty from us, I agree.
We advertise things as a public hearing if it's a public
Well,
hearing,
and I
we did
understand.
not,
I understand.
and I'm sorry.
You'd
You
have
asked to be on the agenda, and that's what we did.
Well,
and
I
don't
didn't-
make exceptions to that ever, so that I don't have to say, well, last time I did this, last time I did this.
I understand. I think everybody in this room would understand if you made this exception. I think everybody on the board would understand if you made that exception this one time for folks who have.
That's just, if
their-
that were the way it worked, then
Sure.
you'd probably be right, but it's
Well,
not.
folks who have children buried over there that are having a difficult time with
Tell me
this.
what you want and what they want.
Jill.
I want to,
would you mind
we want to
speaking?
please you. I don't know what else to do.
Well, what I would ask for is the $75,000 that the city requested for this plan and spent the 17, if we could allocate funding for the difference, which would be $57,000, and perhaps Mark, who's very
Yeah,
talented.
those numbers aren't accurate, so let's talk about accurate numbers. We have it broken down by tree and sod and mulch and,
for the trees.
yeah.
Do you have the?
But
do you have an
can
invoice on
Bart
that?
or Mark speak to the fact that we never had $75,000 allotted?
Yeah, the tree board actually requested that, in their request, we went to the tree board, we said that, you know, this is what we think it will cost. They made that request to y'all. They later amended that request, quite honestly, but they initially made that request during our budget process of 21 or 22, I don't remember the year.
Before a final plan was developed.
Absolutely.
And so it was, that amount was based on just an estimate, not on a set plan. So it wasn't like, I feel like, and we've talked about this, but it wasn't like $75,000 was set aside for that project, and then we said, oh, actually, we're not gonna spend all of that. They said not to exceed $75,000, we then do the plan, and then we facilitate the plan at the cost. We had not priced out every tree or every shrub and every sod and what have you.
Mark's
And so,
a professional, he knows what these things cost. He knows that something costs $75,000 or 17 or 30, I mean, come on. We know that, you know?
It's a place, it was a place.
No, at that time, we absolutely did not. I don't know what the trees cost today versus what they cost in 20, but you know, in 2021, 22, you couldn't guess what nothing was gonna cost.
Well, I think you'd know if something was $1,000 or $100, but look, all this, you're right.
And so you've made a request to the board. So does the board have a question or a comment, or?
I would just once again, could Jill maybe paraphrase the concerns of some of these folks?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, Jill, I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, I love it when you do that.
Pay for this.
Like we said, it's been alluded that we're the only two affected, and unfortunately a dialogue with several families, and then as far as how they're affected, and like I said earlier, as horrible as being exposed and wide open to the cemetery, a very active cemetery, is on us. It pales into comparison. We've got a sweet mama who Jack knows by name now, who comes and visits her son, who is buried right there, right across the ditch. She's here in the audience. We have another sweet Oxford mama, Miss McIntosh, who I think is very vocal and has planted a tree herself, as she said. Probably shouldn't have done that, but just in an effort to get screening, who is very much just open to exploring how we can. I know what we've gotten is just a shutdown, we can't do this, but you have families. Cindy Steiner, who shared with me the other day, she has not been back to the cemetery since April because she went to mourn her sweet husband. She went to see her dad, and while she was grieving, which should have been privately, homeowners right there who were just enjoying their backyard were there to see that, and she hadn't been back since April. The screening, I know that we say just wait, but like I said, if we can just explore, instead of just saying, no, we're done, let's just sit back and wait, for these families to sit back and wait, that's almost unfair to ask them without at least being open to exploring what we can do.
Well, I feel like we have explored what we can do. I guess that's where I get hung up, is I feel like we've explored, we've had a landscape architect make recommendations. They picked the trees that will grow the fastest. I need you to be more specific, like what?
My question is, if 12 to 14 feet, and I hate to stick to that because that's what we saw, and that's what was meaningful coverage for us. That's what we were, that's what we saw. That's twice the length, and I don't know where that picture is of that black chain link fence, but that's meaningful coverage, not just for us, but for them too. And I don't know where that number just came out of thin air and landed on plans if that wasn't an option.
The goal was defined, as I understand, and Mark will have to tell me if I'm wrong, that was the height they hoped to get in the 15-gallon containers. It just wasn't available. We got the largest that were available at the time with the root base that would grow to the height that we hoped. So is that a fair description?
That's fair. We may have been able to get ball burlap, but for a bunch of reasons, I think that would be, and again, having an immediate screen, just say 12 to 14 foot side by side, is not going to do any good if they can't survive. And again, I know I'm predicting that they can't survive, so I understand that, but I'm just telling you from my experience that what we have is able to set roots and really grow. And if we felt like the ball burlap 12 foot tall, spaced tight, was going to last, then I think that's what we're doing. But we're looking, in the long term, to try to get that continuous screen.
So, and just a genuine.
I'm not trying to shut you.
No.
I'm just telling you the rationale behind it.
A genuine question if the city said, hey, Mark, here's $50,000-$60,000, what can you do here to help these? And what I wish we could do is take ourselves out of this equation.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Would a privacy screening in the chain link do you any good? You know, like the slats that go in.
I don't think so, no, because of the topography. It's just, you know, that.
The fence isn't tall enough.
Look, I've thought about it. I've stayed up many nights till 2 in the morning, trying to search things, trying to find things that'll give us some screen. We've got, you know, on our back deck, we've got all these, folding screens there. I mean,
I mean, just looking at the photograph, if you put in
because I mean,
the privacy slats, it would fill in at least the lower gap.
But we're talking about the openness and the proximity. Like, I mean, if I'm on my back deck where I spend about 80% of the time, we're talking about folks being, you know, just on the other side of Hollis right there. And you know, I hate to single you out, but I believe you've got a family member buried right there, where it was cleared. And I bet you remember before it was cleared, and I bet it was nicer. And I know we can't immediately get back there, but I think we can do better. And I guess my question would be, if you were allowed some money, is there something you feel like you could do that could make this better, or is it's just impossible?
I don't know that you're gonna like the answer, but I mean.
Say it with the public can hear it.
Yeah, say it in the microphone for anybody that's live streaming.
You know, I can't. I mean, I can't predict exactly what's going to happen. What would happen if we did that? But we went through the reasons why I feel like that was, you know, what we had was something that was going to grow. And I really do think
Yeah, but
we're
we
going to
can
see.
reason away anything not to do so.
Well, and that's all.
I'm
Yeah.
asking because you've been doing this a long, long time, and you know what you're doing. Is that possible?
Well, Drew, I'll tell you what I asked him yesterday and the answer that I got. I was saying, what would you plant? What would work? I mean, we've had this conversation a million times in our office. And so I was saying, can we go back to the Iliagnus? Can we go back to, you know, what would work? Well, the Iliagnus can't be planted on the cemetery side of the fence because it will spread into where we have already sold plots, cemetery plots. So it grows too deep. So it would have to be planted on the other side. That will grow at the same rate, predictable, assuming good conditions. It would grow at the same rate as the arborvitaes grow, but the arborvitaes have a prediction of being 30 to 60 feet tall, and the Iliagnus would max out. We've got some in the city that have maxed out at 12 feet and some that have grown to 15 or so. And so the arborvitaes were the best solution, grow the same speed, fit the space. That was the question, is what would we do? What else would we do? If we spent more money, what would we do that would offer that? And that was the answer that I got, is that it wouldn't grow faster than what's already planted.
So, and I understand that discussion y'all had, but I guess the question is, if you were allotted, Mark, some funds, is there anything you could do to make this better?
Yeah, I mean, we could. Yeah, I mean, the privacy fence. Yeah, privacy fence. I don't, you know. One thing I would say, and look, I thought about this too, Andre.
I believe.
If what you want is what we want, what the city wants.
Hopefully it's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to say, I know we're only allowed to hear from us tonight, and I understand that. But man, I'm telling you, this is not just us.
Well,
It's not just us.
And Drew, it's not for us, just for you. We are trying to do this for the best long-term plan for the city. on both sides of that ditch. And what Mark has given us is what he says is the best, fastest growing,
And he was answering
What
that
will
question,
fill
I
in.
think.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, I mean, I can't predict how exactly it's going to grow. We've been through this, and I feel confident we have the ground, it's gonna fill in that space, and provide the screen that we need to provide, and it's gonna take time. I mean, that's my best answer.
But, so that was a yes or no? I mean,
With extra money.
I mean, I'm just, I mean, when we're looking at big projects like this, it's 800 square feet. The money that's been spent here seems way off balance for this replanning. I mean, it just does. The original plan from 2019 that was previously attached to the project was $79,000. That's in 2019 money. We all know that ain't the same money nowadays. If we're looking and we compared this to other projects of the city that were going on at the same time, they had 3 times the budget that was fulfilled for landscaping. And so I don't think anyone would argue that when you look at the cost and all of this, and the scope of this project, that what was spent is just not in line ratio wise. I mean, does anybody feel like it was?
I have to trust what my landscape architect is telling me is the best plan. To me, it's not about what would $10,000 more do? It's like what we have asked Mark repeatedly is, what is the best plan to offer the best barrier for long term? What is the best that it grows together? How far do they need to be spaced? Things that I have no idea, but that's why we have Mark, and he continues to insist that this is the best long-term plan.
So I called a landscape contractor yesterday to see what size in the container, because I really think that's important in a container, because there's no obviously no irrigation. And he said 4 to 5 feet, and then you still can't find anything container that gets any height. And anything, the spacing, I feel like is right, especially for our maintenance guys and for all we got going on out there. So, the only thing you do is try to find something taller and stick it where the ones are now, and then you're working against yourself, because they are, the more seasons we can get through, the quicker we can get, they'll start separating. That's.
But generally, construction projects like this, the amount of funding spent for replanting, this falls in line there.
For what type of construction project? I mean.
One of this scope.
For these type projects we've done before, it way exceeds anything.
I mean,
When we did the area west of you, we did no landscaping.
And did the board ever short you and say, you can't spend $1 more? I mean, you presented the plan you thought was the best plan, and it was funded.
So that plan was presented to the board,
the tree board, yes. Tree board.
but the Board of Alderman voted on the plan?
No, they just.
The plan, did it go through planning?
It doesn't have to. Why would it have to?
Most things do, from what I see. I just,
There's a public works exception to the land development.
Well, and I think that's why
Y'all have had this conversation in front of me already several
Of
times.
course I know that, but I was asking because
No, you're asking to make a show.
I'm asking to make a point.
I've asked you, what do you want us to do?
You're right, because we're going round and round.
I mean, I'm not gonna what the board do, but I would like to hear, what would you like us to do?
Well, what we would like to do is to see if the board might allocate additional funding that Mark could maybe go back to the drawing board and see what he could come up with. And if he looks at it and says, you know what, I don't know, but
He has looked at it though, Drew. I don't mean to be disrespectful. He has looked at it. For the past couple of years, he's looked at it. So there's not a new answer to give. And I told you standing in your yard, I hate being the wet blanket. I hate letting you down. I think so much of both of you. I hate that it is causing the cemetery to not be the peaceful place that it could be, but we couldn't fix the drainage issues without cutting things down. And I mean, as you see, I mean, your backyard was falling off into it. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, to fix that issue, everything had to be graded, everything had to be resurfaced, and we just couldn't do that and leave everything that was there. And perhaps we weren't on the same page when Bart said all this will be gone. I pictured it as all would be gone. Y'all didn't, and I hate that. But I don't know what more we can do at this stage of the game. I mean, it's, you know, you're asking the board to allot more money. Somebody on the board can make a motion to allot more money. But I'm hearing Mark, who we're then gonna turn to and say, Mark, what would you do different? What would you change? What would you, and we've asked him that, and his answer is, we have the best plan in place long-term.
So I know we've talked over in your yard and everything else, and my thought then was to go back like the Oxford Garden Club did. They planted everything beyond from where this project started over to 16th. And it was basically Eleagnus, and it grew, I thought it grew faster, but I did not know at the time that we can't plant it on the cemetery side. So I know that's a no starter there. And so you actually can't plant but basically one row of trees there, because if you go, I'm just looking at it right now, those lots are just right there. I didn't know they were that close to the trees, but.
That's why we can't get a double road. Which, if you could get that same spacing in a double road, that would be something you just can't do that there.
Look,
You know,
it seems like there could be a way to get some taller trees to try to shield in certain spots, especially that are just wide open. And don't worry, I mean, like, I appreciate, and I do believe if you could wave a magic wand, you would. I do believe that. But it's not about making, it's just, at this point, we don't feel that, it's not about us anymore. It's really not. I mean, you know, I wish that we could get a fuller picture and really understand how this affects those people who deserve more than
I think we
this.
can all imagine that. What is the solution? Like, how do we improve what is there? I mean, that's still what the conversation comes back to. I'm not being insensitive. I'm just saying, what would we do? And I'm asking Mark, who's the expert, to tell me, is there something we could do that would grow faster, be bigger? And what he's saying is that what is there is going to grow 3 to 5 feet a year once the roots take, and that it'll be 30 to 60 feet tall. And I mean, whatever we plant there is going to, that's the fastest growing. So anything else that we plant is gonna grow maybe that much or slower.
Unless it's taller from the get-go. I mean, I feel like in certain spots, we could certainly plant some taller trees. If you know, if that's not the case, you know, and that's what it is. But you know, this is something that it's just not right for those folks, and it's just not right. And there's right and wrong. It's wrong.
What would we do that makes it right? I mean, that's the question we've come down to in so many of these conversations.
You know, that's not.
But what our landscape architect tells you is the best plan is not good enough, and I don't know what to do past that, Drew.
I think that if I feel confident, Mark's very. I feel like if we gave him that challenge, I think he could figure something
But
out.
that would be to indicate he hasn't already been given that challenge. That has been our challenge throughout this whole thing. There's never been we don't have any money to spend. That's never been it. It's been give us the best plan, not a dollar amount.
I'm open to anything. I can't make a motion right now because I don't know what the cost is, and I'm open for. But is there some type of adjustments that can be made to one side or the other of the fence for privacy purpose?
Like the slats.
Either side. I'm not saying put up a wooden fence, but just adjust the privacy of the chain link fence on one side or the other, or both sides.
Slats in it for sure, the privacy fencing, but they said they didn't want that.
Well, again, it's not about them, is it?
Okay.
It's not about them. And
Then
so.
we certainly can put up
I
privacy
think
chain link.
if you have if we've done the best we can do, again, I understand, I mean, I don't even know if you can go find 14-foot arborvitae today. I don't know. But if you can, you can. If you can't, you can't. It would seem to me that at least some type of solution to provide privacy. We're never going to be able to provide privacy immediately for the deck. It's just too high.
Sure.
And so what I'm thinking of people's backyards, and if you're in your backyard, if we can adjust one or both of the fencing, then I'm open to anything that makes primarily the cemetery private from those at the cemetery from the yards. And I know it works both ways, but again, that's where I'm coming from. So there is something we can do. I think we should at least explore the possibility of what that would be and what that would cost and how to make it work.
The only two things I know of are the two things we've already offered. We can put slats in the fence, or we can build a wooden privacy fence.
Yeah, all right, let's look at them. I mean, again.
We offered those.
Well, I understand, but we're not, again, this is bigger. I don't think we should
Well,
ask one person.
I think that's fair. And we're willing to do it then, and I'm
Mm.
perfectly willing to do the slats in the fence or a solid fence now.
Yeah, I mean, time is what it's gonna take, but this is going to help in the meantime, I hope. And I think it should be explored, and I think we can explore that, because obviously it's been discussed. This predates me by a long time. I think I was probably living on Chandler when it started in the 90s, so that's one thing. That's what I would say. Again, I can't make a motion because I don't know how much it costs, but I'm certainly open to making a motion when we get a cost.
I mean, we don't know what we're looking for. And if we had some type of, hey, this would work, I think we'd all be there. Can you go back? I mean, I think of that, and it wasn't a privacy fence. I keep thinking of the netting that we had down there at David Park. And I know it was big netting, but I mean, I know they make some smaller netting that,
Like we do over construction
sites and stuff. I don't know. I know you can get 10 feet tall there, and they have black or whatever. I mean, is there something we can look at there? I mean, you got 10 feet there.
Within the slats, yes, you could get a fabric that you could attach to the fence for sure. The longevity of it's not.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, but we're looking. I don't know what the longevity of it is. It'd be good to know, but I mean, at least we're giving something.
Until you get height, what's going to create the quickest screen, which you see right there, there's vines that are taking hold of that fence. And that's going to, if you look further down, it's almost completely screened on that backside where there's vines.
Can I ask a
I
question?
think we're looking for immediate, yeah.
Can I ask a question really quick? I know a lot we're focusing just on our backyard, obviously, because we're the two that's up here, but on the, across the street and where several of the mamas that we've talked about, I know different things have been planted there, and I just want to make sure that we're addressing that height that who knows how long, hopefully one of these days we'll be able to enjoy, but I want to make sure that that same amount of screening is offered to.
It'll be the whole project.
It'll be the whole fence.
It'll be the whole project. I mean, we're not doing it just for yours.
I'm talking about the whole project, the whole ditch.
Well, the project part.
Yeah, the project part, that's what I'm considering, and any solution is the entire project. So it's not just of anybody, not just one person, not just, to satisfy anything. Any solution that I think should be considered has to consider the entire improved ditch.
So you'll bring us back just some fencing ideas, I think.
And we can set it for public hearing if it's needed, but again, I mean, I think we can go through and look at solutions and advertise and see where we go from there. But that's the only, I mean, I don't even know if that's the only one, but I'm asking Mark and to get some solutions on privacy.
On the fencing side.
On the fencing side.
And once we look at those, it will require a motion to adjust the budget, but that's not,
I understand.
that's not needed now. Okay?
And I
Anybody?
think the public hearing thing, Brian.
I don't have, I mean, I
think it's a
again,
great- I think it's a great
if it's a
idea
plan, it's a
I would
plan.
love to
I don't know, I've
pass on
talked to
this
Pope about
responsibility
it.
to them and let them.
Well,
Speak
any hearing's gonna be on the existing plan. We understand the issues involved, but, I think I'll talk to Pope about whether or not it's a public hearing on it, but I think something needs to be, I'm certainly involved, and everybody knows my number, and they can call me or email me if they got input on it. But the plan will certainly be posted once we have it and once we agree upon it from a board standpoint for input. So.
I just making a point that I believe at an appropriate agenda item, them being able to come and describe their experiences would be helpful.
Drew, I think I do. I don't understand it 100%, no, but I've been on both sides, and I see, and we understand. Most of us have been there. We've all gone to look at it.
But they're
We
coming
are.
at it from a different. They've got a child who passed away over there, and I don't think that that's something we want.
100% empathize with them, and that's what
We
I'm
gotta
trying
come
to
up
do.
with a way to give them screening.
My
Yeah.
primary concern is that.
Thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is presentation of the annual audit for the fiscal year ended September 30th and request permission to approve the same. Brian?
Thank you. I put on your desk a full copy of the audit. It's about a 100-page document. It's in a black binder. We are not going to go through all of that, I promise you. I also put a summary, which
And we always appreciate your summary.
which condenses it down to about 12 bullet points.
page instead of
One page.
48,000.
This is nice.
And I'll try to be very respectful of your time and go very, very quickly, but we do work for you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions any of you may have, if you have those. Also, 2 or 3 different pages in that document contains our letterhead of our firm. It's Franks, Wildman, and Haygood. Our contact information is on there. If you have questions outside of this meeting, please feel free to reach out by phone or by email. We will be glad to discuss anything with you. But I was looking earlier today, and this is the 11th year we've been doing the audit for the city of Oxford. We truly appreciate your business, appreciate the opportunity to serve you. It's a pleasure to do this, a pleasure to come to this town or city and work with Ashley, Jesse, and all the staff. But if you'll see, my first bullet point references page 2, which references the independent auditor's report. That is a report on our letterhead. It is, again, a unmodified opinion. That is the highest level of assurance we provide as a CPA firm on your financials. You can see back in the early years, we did have qualifications on your report. Those have been removed for the last 3 years. Page 4 through 12 of that document presents the management's discussion and analysis. Various things are discussed in there, but on page 4, we discuss your long-term debt. During this fiscal year, which was the 9/30/23 year, you did issue new debt of $2.3 million. You did repay debt of $7,065,092. Page 10 also discusses the major funding and expenditure categories. And then on page 13 is the first of the financial statements. It is the statement of net position. The assets are presented on page 13. They totaled this year to $331,071,834. That is up $17,451,000 from the previous year. So that includes, of course, your cash, but the primary assets included in that are your infrastructure, plant, buildings, and equipment. Your investment reserve is also included. You can see it did increase by $2.1 million. Cash reserves increased by $4.2 million. Page 14 continues that statement and presents the liabilities of the City of Oxford. At the top section of the page, you can see those did increase by $19,621,000 up to about $164 million in total. Net pension liability is the primary or the total reason for that increase. The net pension liability is the unfunded portion of the state retirement system that is required to be presented on your financials. It increased this year a gross amount of $22,037,000. There's some deferred outflows, inflows, technical stuff that goes in that. The net of that change was about $9.7 million. So you can see, leaving out the pension liability, your total liabilities actually decreased by $2,416,000. So we have assets up by $17 million, liabilities down by $2 million, both of those trending in the positive direction. Your total net position, which is your assets minus your liabilities, increased by $9,610,069 this year. In other words, that's your revenues over expenditures for this year on the GASB accounting method. Page 18 shifts focus more to a budget type presentation. As far as revenue and expenses, your general fund, of course, is your primary operating fund of the city. Your revenues this year were $40,616,934. That's up $2,244,000 from the previous year. I'll talk about the big increases in a moment. Your expenses in the general fund, $42,581,000. Those were up $4,599,000. So we did see a slight decrease in the general fund balance of $961,044. On a positive note, I share this with you each year, the sales tax revenue, which is a major indicator of the strength of your city, increased by $1,019,961, or 7.88%. That's after a 16% increase in the previous year. Your special taxes, which is your hotel, motel, food and beverage type taxes, increased by $1,634,983, or a 21% increase this year. Last year was 39% increase. So your total sales tax and special taxes totaled to $23,354,000. Last year that number was $20,699,000. You can see that accounts for about 50% of your governmental funds revenues or expenditures. Last year that number was 49%. In all your governmental funds, which is all funds of the city other than your utility funds, your fund balances increased by $10,613,359. Everything I've shared with you so far is on a positive note. Page 23 shifts the focus to your utility funds. The electric fund reflects income before transfers of $1,895,000. Water and sewer, an increase of $2,238,000. The Environmental Services Fund does show a decrease of $549,000. I look back over the past 2 years, you split that fund out separately a few years ago. Over the last 2 years, the net is $12,000. Last year was a positive $550, this year a negative $549. I looked a little further at the reason for that. The pension liability I shared with you went up a net of about $9.7 million. That fund took a pretty good hit in there because we have more salaries going to that account. It's a relatively new account. The pension liability actually increased by $655,000 in that fund. You remove that, it actually operated at a surplus. Page 24, 36, and 37 talks about the fixed assets or the infrastructure, plant, equipment of the city. This year in the utility funds, or in the governmental funds, I'm sorry, in the utility funds, you invested $10,703,000. In the governmental funds, you invested another $9,237,000. So almost $20 million of additions to your infrastructure, plant, and equipment. And you did all that with only borrowing $2.3 million in new debt. Page 38, and again on 89, two different schedules related to long-term debt. Your total long-term debt is $59,543,000. That's down a net amount of $4,765,000 this year. Most all of your debt's on very, very favorable interest rate terms in the environment we're operating in today. Page 45 through 51 just discusses that pension liability. We've already talked about a little bit. Page 90, anytime you have federal grant dollars that you expend that exceed $750,000, we as auditors have to apply additional procedures, what's called a single audit. This year, your federal expenditures were $5,098,777, and we have issued a independent auditor's report on your internal control and compliance in relation to those federal programs. We report no findings related to those. And that is referenced there, second bullet point from the bottom, page 98, is a summary of auditor results. We do have 2 findings on internal control and compliance, but neither of those are related to federal grant dollars. And then we did get to 100 pages this year. The last 2 pages are those 2 findings. The first one deals with the fixed asset accounting that's required specifically by the state auditor's office. We are not in full compliance there. You continue to make strides there. You do have software now. You have personnel working on that, continuing to make improvements, just not 100% there. And then the last page, page 100, discusses this year you did have 4 expenditure categories with some very, very insignificant budget overages, and we identified exactly what those were related to. You received some additional funding from the state of Mississippi for premium pay for your officers. 3 of those were caused when you received that reimbursement, which I understand why. It was a reimbursement of expenses. Those were posted to the expenditure categories. We had to move those to revenue in the audit. The budget was amended based on what you had at the time, the most relevant information. Once we moved those, it caused a budget overage. And again, premium pay, very, very explainable, not related to federal grant dollars. Okay? And
Great summary.
And you can see based on that last bullet point how far the city has came in the last 11 years as far as findings and qualifications. And that, again, when I referenced earlier, it's a pleasure to come work here now with Ashley and Jesse. We truly appreciate the opportunity to do this for you. And again, if we can help you in any way, contact information's on that letterhead. Please feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks so much. Does anybody have a question for Brian? No? Thank you.
Thank y'all.
And so we don't need to accept that, or?
Yes,
I mean,
please.
We do, okay.
Motion made.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, request permission to approve the FY24 ad valorem tax request for the Oxford Municipal Separate School District. Allison or Bradley, either one? Either one or both? Oh, no, we will not have a quorum. I mean, y'all have to excuse yourself, but
Hey, come back in for a minute. I might as well explain this to the public. What we've got are 3 folks who've got contracts with the school district who are looking to recuse because they have contracts with the school district. What the AG has said is if that brings you below a quorum to require the recusal, then you cannot recuse if it will make you unable to vote on necessary things like granting the school district funding. I leave it to the 3 of you. All 3 of you may want to stay. To be just frank, Rick's conflict seems the least. It's just a contract that may or may not be granted.
Rock, paper, scissors, guys.
It's tangential,
That's how it is.
you're not an employee.
Right.
Crisis.
All right.
And fortunately,
Thank
we don't
you.
have anything controversial to say tonight anyway. We have
Well,
really
praise the
good
Lord.
news. So, no, we're thankful again, Mayor Tannehill and Board of Aldermen, for the partnership we have with the Oxford School District. And we're here tonight just to say that we are requesting that meals stay level from this past year, and that's quite an accomplishment.
That is quite an accomplishment.
Since we did pass a $37 million bond. But we can assume that debt payment, at least for this upcoming school year, without raising our taxes on our taxpayers. So we're excited about that.
That's great.
And we will be screaming that from the rooftops come Thursday. We'll have a press release about
Absolutely.
that as well.
And you should. And you should. All right. So do I have a motion to approve their ad valorem tax request?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you both for your friendship and partnership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Request permission to advertise for reverse auction bids for equipment for the Environmental Services Department. Amberlyn?
Good evening. As we grow, we need more. So I would like to advertise for 2 pieces of equipment, a front-end loader garbage truck and a leaf vac attached. It's the body part. We already have the chassis to save money, and so we're going to replace the bed.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a letter of agreement with the Internal Code Council to teach the 2024 residential code class at the Oxford Conference Center. The estimated cost to the city is $2,310.
Motion
Jonathan?
made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission for the chief of police to sign a field education affiliation agreement with the University of Mississippi School of Applied Sciences, Department of Social Work.
Yes, ma'am. So this will be a program we'll kick off next semester, but we'll be able to bring interns in to help with our victim services program. So they'll be able to help with court, doing follow-ups with our victims. This will really add to our reach of what we have. So we have 2 employees now. Now we can add interns that can help us be able to meet more needs on a daily basis.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Request permission to approve a parade permit for Stronger Together Oxford to host a supply drive to benefit the Oxford ARC in the City Hall Pocket Park on August 17th from 2 to 4.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next thing on our agenda is not worded correctly. I was just made aware. It's listed as a plat amendment, but it is a preliminary and final subdivision plat for Grand Oaks Commercial.
Yes.
Is that
sorry
correct?
about
Did I get it
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
Okay.
It's preliminary and final plat. The subject property is located off Grand Oaks Boulevard and Highway 7 and includes Barron Street and Lyles Drive. It's an existing 13.42 acre lot that will be divided into 2 lots with 1.7 acres set aside for stormwater detention. The proposed lots meet the underlying zoning requirements of the SCO district, and the case was unanimously recommended for approval at the May meeting of the Planning Commission. And since then, the conditions of approval placed on the project by the Planning Commission have been satisfied. So staff's recommending approval of the preliminary and final plat.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Kate. Request permission to accept the proposal and execute the agreement with A2H for the Oxford Conference Center Roof B replacement project. Holy cow, there's so many pieces of this roof to replace.
Yeah, indeed. So this is a project that's actually on and off again for the past 3 or 4 years. We're finally asking permission to hire the designer so we can get that project bid out.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to award the low bid and execute contract documents for the Oxford Conference Center Rifle Range HVAC replacement project.
Motion made.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to advertise for annual material bids for FY 24-25.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to award the low bid and execute contract documents for the 2024 microsurfacing project.
Yes, this is the pavement preservation project that we started a couple of years ago. Just neighborhood, local streets located on the perimeter of town and annexed areas. So there should be minor disruptions to school traffic and especially ball game weekends, things like that.
Wonderful. I'm excited about that project. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to accept ownership and maintenance of Old Oaks Lift Station number 1.
Yes, the Old Oaks is actually in the county on Campground Road, but the subdivision that we supply utilities for. This lift station has actually been in operation for almost 5 years, but it's had some problems. They had to upgrade it. It is now up to our standards and specifications, so we're asking to take ownership and maintenance of it.
Motion made. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request an additional 14 days to the contract time for the Downtown Regional Detention Project.
Yes, this substantial completion date, as it's set out in the contract now, is August the 16th. That date was set before we actually opened bids in the advertisement. We are assuming that the board would approve on a specific board date. That was actually pushed back a week. Then we got out there and started digging, and the first thing we found were these huge electrical duct banks that nobody knew were there. They've apparently been there for centuries, I guess. But anyway, it has really backed them up a good week. So what we're asking for right now, they'll probably come back and ask for more time later, but right now they deserve another 2 weeks to push that substantial completion date to the end of the month. And then we'll deal with the rest later.
We would like to not have to deal with any more
We
later.
would like to not have to deal with it, but
It's pretty important.
yeah.
Do what? That's right, exactly, dig and dump. All right, so then I need a motion. That it's August 16th, so August 30th.
It's tight.
Do I have a motion to grant those 14 additional days to the contract time?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request approval of a contract amendment with UKG to upgrade time clocks. Braxton?
Yes, we received a call last week that all of our current time clocks are out of date and they can no longer be updated. So we have to replace our 5 current time clocks to where they can receive updates. And this is the new price with the newer time clocks.
How long are these gonna last?
Oh, those other ones lasted about 8 years.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to approve a list of budget amendments and reallocations for FY 23-24. Ashley?
Yes, it's just a list of things that need to be adjusted. Most of them were reallocations within the department that resulted in a few net changes, but mostly a housekeeping item to keep us in line with the budget.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Consider change order number 2 from JP Corps for concrete leveling at the Oxford Conference Center.
So this will be the second change order that I'm requesting. The stone pavers at the 3 exterior doorways are about a 1/4 inch too tall to fit under the doorway, so we will need to level the concrete right in front of the doorway. It's a $2,990, excuse me, not $29,000, $2,900. And they're requesting 5 extra days, but it's not gonna take that. They're gonna be finished on time. So I recommend approval.
Well, if we want our doors to open, we don't have much of a choice.
Second.
It looks great, by the way.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Consider change order number 1 from BCI for a UPS system at the new Oxford Police Station. Mark.
So this is the budget amount. The budget amount for the UPS, which stands for uninterruptible power source, was $92,000. So that allows the dispatch and all the equipment to run in the case that they lose power. The original budget was $92,000. We've looked at it and we've value engineered and got it down to $45,000, but we saved $50,000.
I see that.
With an added change order.
So is that a battery backup system or is that a generator?
It's a battery backup. From the time the generator kicks on,
Afraid it might change.
Right.
It's uninterrupted.
Is that bridge?
It's a UPS.
It's that bridge between.
That's right.
Power
And,
outage.
and it has to be there for that few seconds.
Right, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it.
All right, do we have a motion?
45,000.
And a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We have an addition at 23A, Kelly, to consider a quote for access control system at the ARC. We talked about this during Kelly's budget, and the board requested that she go ahead and do this earlier as money was allotted, so.
Just requesting to accept those 3 quotes and to go ahead and install with the lowest bidder, which is Oxford Alarm.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you. I ask the board to consider an executive session.
Motion to consider executive session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The board will now consider an executive session.